Hello traders and welcome to the weekly Outlook and Setups volume 136. It's Iliya here, and as always I'm really grateful to have you on the Trading Fanatic channel. As you know, in this video we're gonna have a look at the market, how it developed this week, what kind of opportunities we had, and what we can potentially expect for the upcoming week. This one was rather choppy. We entered into a consolidation since Monday and we kept in that consolidation all the way until Thursday, when we actually had a couple of CPI news releases and also a speech from Mr. Bullard from the Fed, which caused a couple of huge moves, some whipsaws as well. But I'm going to speak more about that on the DXY analysis. But pretty much it was not really a tradable week for me. I only took 2 trades, both of them break even, and I really decided to protect my capital and wait for the market to really move before I engaged in some trading. So I really hope you actually protected your capital as well this week. Within the community, we also spoke that it was indeed rough. I also spoke to a couple of you as well that had a rough week. So indeed, we were stuck in this consolidation. So once again, I really hope that you managed your risk well and you did not suffer any losses. But of course, right now we're going to explore what we can do next week. And hopefully, we're finally going to start having some clearly trending markets. Before we start, I would love to let you know that this channel is all about trading. I'm going to start posting more on other things as well. So make sure you are subscribed. Turn on the notification bell in order not to miss all the future updates. And before we start, shout out to an amazing broker that is cedarforex.com. It is great. It has low spreads. It is also amazing for crypto, for stock trading. But if you pick their eco account, in which you pay a little bit of commission, but after every single lot that you trade, the commission goes towards planting 10 trees. So I really think this is an amazing initiative. I support them on that. So make sure to check the link down in the description. Check all the links as well. And yeah, let's head into the analysis. Alright, as always, let's get started with a Dixie. So if you remember from the last Outlook where we had a monthly analysis, we are currently reacting from this little range on the weekly, right? But overall, we are bullish on the dollar, and pretty much if we also consider the fundamentals. So Mr. Bullard announced that potentially they first said that they're going to increase the interest rate by 50 basis points, and then they said 100 basis points, which I think it's 1%. So pretty much this should be bullish for the dollar, while we at first saw a massive bearishness, but then as you can see, the week actually closed bullish. All right. So I'm kind of building up first a bullish perspective in terms of fundamentals. And once again, we first tapped inside this zone right there. We reacted to the downside. We created a higher low formation. Then we rushed into the highs and we created a higher high, which pretty much created our weekly range, which we marked last week. And then we had this massive bearish engulfing candle that really kind of caused a lot of us to doubt, right? So is this a bearish engulfing candle? Are we going to flush? Right? But as I told you, as long as we remain in this range, then we should remain bullish, right? And the overall perspective on the dollar is also bullish. So I'm really right now looking forward to see how it's actually going to respond, right? Because we pulled back all the way down right there. And as you can see, since the open this week, which was 7th of February, right there, consolidation, and then we had this massive whipsaw to the downside that actually did not break the low, made a higher high, and right now we are kind of starting to impulse a little bit higher. Okay, so if we take into consideration the daily and the weekly, we are bullish. Okay, another thing I want to mark out is that this right now is an inside bar. Okay, so what we can expect is that next week we are gonna attack either the high or the low, or even both of them. So what we can have is first the manipulation of the low, then the high. We can, of course, have another inside bar, which I really wouldn't like because that would mean another week of consolidation, or we can just flush to the downside, right? So rather uncertain times right now and really hard to actually determine a bias. In order to keep it as simple as possible, let's focus on the 4H. So we know that on the daily, we pulled back beautifully below 50%. We stopped right there. We initiated a pullback, and pretty much this week we traded within this price right there. And then, of course, for me, my major lower high is this one right there. And as you can see, we consolidated. On the news events, we had a massive run into the highs, which looks like it actually tapped into this lower high. Massive rejection lower. At the time, this was looking really bearish, but then the market just rejected from the downside and started pushing higher, created a higher high, pull back higher low, and right now higher high again into this zone. Okay. So currently the market is starting to cook for something. And again, if we are going to turn bullish, I would really love to see the 4-hourly turn a little bit bullish as well, which is kind of already doing, but it's not really certain for me. personally, right? Because again, this is our last lower high before this move to the downside, and everything in between right there is kind of minor structure. It's within this leg, right? So we have this leg right there. This is the high, this is the low. So everything in between is noise. And as long as we remain below this one, we're technically bearish, all right? So for next week, I'm really looking forward to see if we're actually going to break above this one. And if we do break above it, then I can start adapting for longs, okay? But if I also zoom in, we can see that we had a push that actually broke with a wick. Then we had a pullback, which I do think actually tapped 50% or almost. And then we had another initiation higher that also made a new high right there. So pretty much right now, we can also mark this as potential demand level. And of course, we can add the one to the downside, which is this one, which is the major one where actually the move started after all of that manipulation, right? Because if I drop on the 15 minutes, you can see we had a massive run into the highs, a massive run into the lows. Pretty much you can see the big consolidation right there, run into the highs, stopping out all the short sellers, taking new buys into the market, then stopping out the buyers, inducing new sellers right there. And then again, everybody stopped out when the market actually starts moving, all right? Actually, on Friday, I was looking for longs on the DXY from this level, but it developed a little bit too late, right there, like 4 o'clock, and it was just chopping around. But also, I can see that the 50-minute is starting to turn bullish. So pretty much my overall outlook on the DXY right now is bullish. I'm also aware of the shorts. If we start breaking below these levels, then of course we can start targeting lower levels right now. But still, we are within this daily leg. We have pulled back, and right now I am curious to see how the 4-hourly is gonna develop. But personally, I can be looking for longs from right there as the market opens. If not, then we can of course look for longs right there. And if both of those levels actually fail, then we can say that the DXY is potentially gonna turn bearish. Okay, so very important to stay tuned for my Tuesday analysis on Telegram, right? So let's see how Euro USD is performing. Let's have a look at EU. So the first thing that I want to point out on EU is that unlike the DXY, we are not having an inside bar formation, right? So as you can see, those two highs right there were actually liquidity grabbed with this wick, and then we responded very bearishly to the downside, right? So this is even better because we have a liquidity grab and we can already start framing that the market can potentially go down. And of course, pairing this with the overall bearish sentiment on Euro, right? And if you remember, we're pretty much expecting the market to revisit the 1.10 zones right there. So yeah, last week was really tricky. We had this very nice push to the downside. Then this candle was really confusing, right? And right now we're having a bearish candle. So we can have potentially two outcomes, okay? And again, as I said, it is still quite uncertain. It is really hard to determine a proper bias because this one can right now be a push. This candle can just be a pullback, and then next week we can just initiate higher and have a reversal, okay? So let's, as always, keep an open mind and really try to play whatever we see. Because once again, we can see the same situation that we had this week. It's even developing on the daily. We have a massive range. The market pushes into the highs, entices buyers, pushes into the lows, entices sellers, and pushes again into the highs. So what are we doing? Right? It's just very hard to determine. And this is mainly because of all the things that are happening within the economy, the US as well, the euro, inflation, and all of that stuff. So currently, we can argue what is the bias on EU, right? We have this massive pump into the highs that did not really cause a break of significant structure, except from this one right there. But still, let's keep an open mind. I have this zone right there, which we can also see on the 4-hourly time frame, right? So if we consider this to be a push and this to be a pullback, then I'm going to be looking for potential longs on this area. But as I start dropping to the 4-hourly time frame right now, we're going to see that it's slightly turning bearish, okay? But pretty much what was my outlook this week? It was overall bearish because I wanted to see the market pull back below 50%, tap into these areas right there and start going long. What happened is actually during the news, the market absolutely perfectly tapped 50% and then it rushed into the highs, right? It took out this high, then I thought, okay, maybe right now we're turning bullish, but then the next morning we were already breaking structure to the downside and developing in a bearish manner, okay? So as you can see, very, very, very tricky. And right now we are just tapping into this range. So we're yet to see right now if EU is actually going to respond in the bullish manner, or is it going to break below this level and continue to the downside, breaking these lows right there. So we are in a very, very, very tricky situation. If I just keep it simple and focus on the 4H, So we had this very nice liquidity grab, then the market started moving lower. We had this pullback, and then as we can see on Friday, actually the last hours right there, we have this kind of sell-off. Come on, okay? So we just have this break of structure that I want to mark, this one right there. And we have this overall big wick that created the lower high. We can also take this candle right there. So this is pretty much a great zone of interest. But then the thing is, if we first tap into this zone right there, I'm going to be interested in longs. Okay, so I'm going to be dropping onto the 50-minute right there, looking for the shift, looking for potential longs. But I'm not going to go long towards there. I'm just going to TP exactly right there, because then we can, of course, expect the market to sell off and to turn overall bearish. Okay, so this whole range for me is very interesting. We have this kind of series of sell candles. You can probably take even something like this. But as soon as we start tapping into this blue zone, I'm going to start being interested in longs. Okay. Then there is another scenario. If we first decide to actually pull back, because we're currently in this beautiful push, right now we're initiating a pullback. So if the market on Monday does not flush to the downside first, but it starts to pull back into the highs like this, then probably on Tuesday, I'm going to be interested for sells. Okay. But if we first actually start pumping to the downside, then I'm going to start get interested in longs, right? Depending on how it plays out. And yeah, then it's just about flowing with the market. And again, nowadays, it's really hard to actually pick a nice hard time frame direction. So adaptation and keeping an open mind is really needed, right? So keep an open mind, and pretty much I am overall bullish so far on Euro, which means that I should be overall bearish on Dixie, right? Which is not making too much of a sense, right? But pretty much those are the levels that I'm going to be looking for. And once again, a tap inside right there can trigger longs. If we first initiate with a pullback, then this can trigger shorts into the demand. And pretty much then we have to adapt and see how the market is going to play within this range. Okay, so once again, very important, stay tuned for my Tuesday analysis, where we can potentially see how Monday opened and how we can position ourselves for the remaining of the week. Tricky price action on Euro Yen. So we had this massive bullish engulfing candle, and as you can see, at a point this week, the market was actually creating a beautiful high, but then all of a sudden they just rejected and flushed to the downside. And this is once again after the news. Also UJ slipped a little bit, and we saw that actually right there we had a rejection on Thursday, and on Friday we had a little bit of a sell-off. Okay, so immediately, does that mean that we are bearish? Well, not really, right? Not really, because if we also consider our daily leg, well, pretty much we started from the downside and we ended up right there, and we're just tapping below 50%. Okay, if I try to spot potential zone for an entry, well, it pretty much is the major high low right there, right? This is where potentially the orders were initiated. But we have also this bullish engulfing candle, and just before that we had a little range right there. So this is potentially where the orders were stacked before they were initiated, right? And right now we're having this very sharp withdrawal from the highs right there. And I do think this is pretty much a reaction from the absolute extreme zone right there. And after the reaction, then of course we can start targeting this level if the market is going to maintain this bullish scenario. But yeah, I can say that we are overall bullish, right? So we started from there, we pushed, the market created kind of a lower high. So if you look at it like this, push, pullback, this was supposed to be a lower high, but we failed to make a new lower low. We responded from this demand, and right now we are bullish, right? So pretty much I'm bullish on EJ right now. Then the thing is, okay, how are we going to trade this one? Well, it's a little bit tricky because we had this massive bump into the highs right there. So the market has to fulfill all of that empty space, which is also similar to EU, although the empty space is already being filled, right? So can we start expecting longs? Could be, okay? But currently EJ is a bit tricky because it's stopping exactly in the middle. There is nothing on the left, right? And it's kind of in this massive sell impulse. That also caused the break of structure right there, which was at the time the major 4-hourly higher low, right? The pullback. High, boom, break of the last higher low, which means that currently we are overall bearish. We have this little indecision candle, which is also bullish, kind of a pullback. You can, of course, take the whole range like this. But once again, I'm having a similar outlook as on EU. If the market first decides to start flushing to the downside, then I'm going to be waiting for Tuesday and Wednesday to potentially start striking for longs. But if we at first pull back into this lower high right there and start forming a nice rejection and potentially start flipping on the 50-minute time frame, I'm going to be looking for sells. Okay, So this is my very simple outlook on EJ. We can see that the 50-minute, how it shifted from the top right there. So this was also our last demand, responded, then it shifted right there. And since then we have been bearish. And this is pretty much the last lower high right there before the initiation lower. So if we come into pullback right here in this zone, I do think this can be a very high probability short. So let's see, and then potentially we can actually pull back towards the daily level, create this beautiful weekly pullback, and then from there we can start initiating higher and targeting those highs if of course the euro is strong and the JPY is weak. So let's see, currently short-term short bias, but if we start pushing to the downside, then of course we can start just monitoring for the longs. Let's have a look at the Aussies starting from AU. All right, so on the weekly time frame, we determined last week that this market is overall bearish. So we had this very nice push to the downside. We had a pullback, and then although we initiated a very nice move to the downside, this one did not cause a complete break of structure. It just kind of wicked it, but on a lower time frame, we can actually count this as a break of structure. And then pretty much the market actually pulled back. So if we try to find, okay, where is our major lower high? Well, it's this one right there. This is the highest point of the pullback. So pretty much on the weekly, as long as we remain below this level, we should be sell bias, okay? Taking this information and dropping onto the daily, you can see that if we actually refine and make this level a little bit smaller, this is pretty much the last candle. Oops, I just duplicated this one. This is the last level of supply before the move to the downside. And what did I tell you about wicks? They usually tend to get filled roughly around 50%. And yeah, you can see this one almost came to the 50%, but pretty much in this range between the 25 and the 50. Okay. So what you can get confused right now is that you can say we had a push. The market tried to make a new low, but failed. And right now we have a push into the highs, which looks like it created a higher high on the daily right there. So the daily kind of looks a little bit bullish, but of course the higher timeframes are always going to trump over the lower ones. So if the weekly is bearish, then the chance of actually the market going bearish is higher. Okay. So if you don't spend too much time on the daily, I want to transfer your attention onto the 4H, right? So this market opened right there and we just started rolling to the upside, and I was actually looking for shorts right there. In fact, I took a short right there. I was actually on this candle to the downside, but then it failed to even break the low. So I got started at break even, and then the market actually started slowly rolling to the upside. Then we entered into a consolidation period, right? Which is really tricky. We have to explore this on the hour, probably. Look at that. So there was a long right there potentially on one of the days, but it developed a little bit too early. You can see 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Then as I wake up, the market was already pushing into the highs. But then we had a massive wick to the downside. Then we had a massive push into the upside, and then a massive breakdown to the downside. Okay. So I think this was just a textbook manipulation. Some of you might call it also Wyckoff schematic. I don't understand those things, but I just read the price. So what is it telling me right now is that at first we had this kind of break of structure right there, which is not very clear, but the market broke higher, and then we just broke lower and broke below this higher low. Then we already initiated a pullback on Friday, pulled back above 50%, and right now we are on the move lower. Okay, so I am personally favoring more shorts at this moment on AU, right? Taking all of this information on the weekly, the daily is kind of 50-50, but the 4H is right now in this sell bias market. And of course, if we have a new lower low right there, this is going to confirm because we had a break of the first low right there. This is a pullback, potential lower high. If it makes a lower low, then this is going to be a confirmed lower low, which turns this into a confirmed lower high. And then of course, we can just start trading it to the downside. Okay, so this is pretty much my outlook, and what I will be looking for, of course, is for the market to initiate lower and continue making new lower lows, right? And then the question is, right, are we first gonna pull back a little bit to catch into a short, or is it just first gonna dump to the downside? Well, again, we have to look at a lower time frame on this one. What we see on the 50-minute is that we pulled back above the 50% and we just consolidated right there, and then all of a sudden we just dropped to the downside. So pretty much for me, this whole zone right there is where the 50-minute initiated to the downside. So if it actually comes if Monday opens and pulls back into this area, then potentially shorts could be interested, right? And then we're going to target a new lower low. But overall, what I would expect to happen is for the market to just finalize this momentum to the downside, make a new lower low, and then from there, look for a new lower high and continue the move to the downside. Okay. So a very key week or weeks are ahead of us where we're actually tapping into weekly zones. And if really the weekly is gonna persist and start pushing lower. You can see this was a lower low, this was the next lower low, this could be a weekly lower high. So what we can do is we can simply start targeting these levels down there, which is quite a lot of move. Okay, so let's see how it's gonna play out. Framing an overall short bias on AU. Of course, let me know what your thoughts in the comments, but looking to sell from here, or if you break below, then pull back and selling again from a lower high. If you're also checking AJ, so this one is also slightly a bit tricky, which looked a little bit more bullish than bearish due to the USD JPY, right? So yeah, pull back on the weekly, then it pushed into the highs, failed to make a new higher high, pulled back, right now attempted to make it again. So is it finally going to roll to the downside? Well, this is what we have to see. On the day, very tricky pairs to analyze, by the way, the JPYs. We had this push to the upside and we went all the way up inside this zone. Okay, we rejected it very strongly and we're printing this kind of bearishness right now, but still on the daily we're slightly a bit bullish, right? So we're yet about to encounter this whole zone right there, and we have to see, is it gonna hold or is it gonna break? Okay, if we also pay attention to the 4H, well, the 4H is right now bearish, in fact, right? We had a push higher high, higher low, higher high, boom, break of the last higher low, which is potential shift of the trend. Then we have a pullback, lower high, and this one already made the lower low, right? AU is currently on the way. This one already made the new lower low, which we can classify this as a structure break as well, which determines our new supply zone right there. Okay, so let's see if really the Aussies are gonna fall down, then potentially this zone right there could just be a reaction point for the market to pull back, to create a lower high, and then just to start targeting the lows. And of course, all of this is gonna become liquidity. So our first target will be this one. And then of course, we can start targeting even these zones right there. So I'm building a pretty bearish scenario on the Aussies. Of course, let's see, this is what I see right now. So personally, shorts from right there. If you are willing to take the risk, you can also kind of hedge or grab some longs from there if you are provided with your setups. But overall, I'm framing a short bias for now on the Aussies. Let's see how Monday is gonna open. Let's see what's gonna set up. And as always, remember to just flow with the market and listen to what it tells you. Unlike the Aussies, the NZDs are actually looking pretty bearish, right? If we don't pay attention on the left, and if we just pay attention to what is happening right now on the week, right? We had this very nice pump into the downside. The market beautifully pulled back above 50% on the weekly, and right now we're leaving this beautiful rejection candle. So what do I tell you about wicks? They tend to get retested roughly around 50%. So let's see how does that actually look like on the lower time frame. So on the daily, yeah, we're kind of in this complex correction right now, but this is not even a break of structure, okay? Because this one right there, the leg is clearly this one. So whatever happens between this high and this low is just nonsense, right? While on some of the pairs, we had like a very nice brief pullback right there, which you can classify as major structure, right? Which is once again where all the different understandings of all of us unique traders come into play, right? But pretty much for me, the last bullish candle on this one was here. All of these candles right there made new lower lows. So according to me, this one is the major high, this one is the major low. So pretty much this is just complex correction or minor structure. So I'm pretty bearish on this pair, right? Then if we drop to the 4H, we can perfectly see that 25 to 50% of that wick right there perfectly resonates with this kind of supply that was created. And yeah, once again, we had a tricky week on this one as well. We initiated with a little push to the upside, pull back, slow. Then we slowed down for 2 days right there. Then we had a move lower, a move higher, then actually broke structure right there, right? And then we already pulled back, created this level, and right now we are on our way to make a new lower low as well. Okay, so very similar to AU. If we at first actually happen to pull back towards these zones right there, then yes, you can jump into sales, and target potentially this new lower low right there. Come on, for a new lower low. Or if you first actually decide to flush to the downside, create a new lower low, then what you have to do is wait for a new lower high and then potentially continue to the downside, right? I'm pretty bearish on the NZDs, which makes me think that the Aussies are also gonna go bearish. So let's see, right? Very simple analysis right there. Just looking for this zone as my lower high, which is not yet confirmed. Why? Because it hasn't made a new lower low, right? So let's see. Of course, if we have a little pullback, we can start engaging. But personally, I don't see the longs right now, which is why I will mainly be focused on shorts. And if you also explore NZD JPY, it beautifully pulled back all the way into the weekly supply. It beautifully fulfilled the 50% range. We're having a weekly wick right now, which we can of course take like this 50% and see where actually the 50% resonates with. And once again, perfectly it resonates with this last lower high formation right there. And pretty much on this one, we started rolling to the upside, pushed, pulled back, higher high. Then we actually broke the last higher low, right? We pulled back, then we made a new lower low, which means that pretty much we made one low, right now two lows, which means that we are in a confirmed trend, right? Because sometimes you can have like an uptrend and the last higher low can get broken, but then all of a sudden you can have this, right? Which means that if the first low is broken, then not always it's gonna work. But if you have like a push, a pullback, a push, a break of the first low, then a break of the second one right there, then this is definitely a confirmed trend, which is what we have right now, okay? So yeah, on this one, very simple. I'm simply going to be looking for a pullback towards the highs right there, lower high formation. Then of course, all of this stuff right there can become liquidity and we can just target potentially a new lower low right there. So let's see, I am calling a lot of shorts on the Aussies and the NZDs. Of course, it could be wrong. So take it with a grain of salt because again, it is very uncertain right now, everything. But overall, the technicals and overall the higher time frame analysis are calling shorts on both NZDs and Aussies. So let's see if we can catch some. It will be really difficult to analyze UJ because we're still kind of stuck within this range. The weekly candle this week, well, it pushed very nicely into the highs, but then it massively rejected. It still closed bullish, but I cannot extract much information from the weekly time frame right there. And of course, if I drop to the daily, you're gonna see that this rejection, the whole rejection actually occurred on Friday when we actually had a little bit of a sell-off, right? So pretty much the structure is really hard to be read right there. We have this push, pullback, lower high, lower low. Then we actually broke the lower high, which made a new higher high. Pullback, this is a higher low. It was also confirmed one. So currently on the daily, we are bullish, right? And our major higher low looks like it's this one right there. We have a little bit of a slowdown exactly right there, which could be kind of a 4-hourly, a little bit of demand right there. But still, I am overall bullish on UJ. And of course, if we drop to the 4-hourly time frame, we cannot extract much, right? We have this beautiful push, nice pullback, then we just created a new higher high, right? So our overall range, overall on the daily, it's this one right now. And we're just tapping into that first daily zone, okay? And yeah, it's just a pullback. We cannot say that the 4-hourly right now, it's really shifting to the downside because it's not, right? Yes, the last 4-hourly higher low was this one and it's not even broken. But even if it breaks, then we cannot really turn bearish yet because the daily is right now bullish. The overall sentiment is also bullish, but it's really hard to be traded, especially after this big wick right there. And it's going to be pretty tough to actually determine what's going to happen because you can see we have a massive run to the downside. The market can simply pull back right now, give us a little bit of a short, potentially into this big zone. And then there, from this big zone, we're going to see if we're actually going to continue with this overall trend to the upside or are we actually going to turn bearish, okay? This depends on the Dixie. This also depends on the JPY because USD-JPY is a whole monster on itself, right? We have the JPY right there, and this is like the DXY, but for all the JPY pairs. So let's see. I am still bullish in terms of the higher time frames, namely the daily and also the weekly, but I'm just going to be mindful of all of those levels and probably even a shorter term sell because what I see right there is that we massively initiated to the downside. On the 50-minute, we created this kind of supply right there, right? So we can potentially pull back here at first, and if the market really starts showing us some signs of a reversal, we can take a short and ride it into the downside right there. Somewhere around these zones right there, and then from here we can actually see if the market is gonna shift and start providing us with some longs. Okay, so nothing too much to say on the USD-JPY. My biggest tip will be to actually let this price to develop a little bit, let it settle, let it show you actually where it wants to go, and then start striking. Because nowadays, right now, the market is very tricky since the start of the year. It's really making you kind of really question everything, really question the trend and get stuck into those consolidations. So this is the time to actually practice patience, to practice discipline, and to really wait for your setups to show up, for the market to start trending, because there are gonna be opportunities, okay? So don't stress, you're not missing out on anything. Wait for your setups to come, and that is when you're gonna start capitalizing. Let's explore the GBPs. Again, a very tricky week across the GBP market as well. So pretty much once again, we are responding from this weekly supply. Overall on the weekly, this market is bearish, although we saw last week that on the monthly we're in this push and this pullback, and we can also potentially expect the highs, right? But pretty much, as I said, very uncertain, right? And right now the market is just stuck right there within this level, which is also kind of yeah, it's above 50%, which means that shorts should be in play. But also if you have a look at this overall leg right there, it is just like ranging within the 50%. So it's really trying to figure out what it wants to do. Okay. Overall, currently still the sentiment is overall bearish, right? And if the Dixie goes long and if Euro also goes short, then I do think this one should actually follow to the downside. But yeah, what we had pretty much this week is Monday, big wick, Tuesday, big wick, Wednesday, big wick, Thursday, even a bigger wick, right? And then Friday, also another wick. Wow. This is a roller coaster right there on GU. And pretty much again, if you remember, we marked this zone right there and this zone failed to break. We just had a little liquidity grab above right there. So what I really want to see right now is if the market is going to break below this sort of structure right here, because this is on the daily. If this one breaks on the daily, then this can tell me that, okay, we have a break. We have the seller signifying selling pressure. We're breaking below the structure. We can have a pullback and then we can potentially continue going lower. Well, right now we are just stuck in a range, right? We're just in a range. So there is nothing you can do. You cannot force it right there. And all you can do is just lose trades. Okay. So it's very key right now to actually let the market tell you what it wants to do. Even if you drop to the 4H, it's still very hard to determine what it wants to do, right? Yes, we're overall bearish. Yes, we're tapping into the zone. Yes, also from here, we made a high right there. Then we ran and made a new lower low right there. So we shifted the trend. Then this was kind of sort of the pullback. So the bias this week was actually shorts. We had a little short right there, but then we actually went, liquidity grabbed above this high. And then right now we are back into the range, okay? So as I told you, in order for me to start trading GU, I would need to see some momentum, either to the downside to really see a new lower low, then I'm going to start looking for a lower high and continuation. Or if this guy decides to start pushing higher, then cool, push higher, show me that there are longs, and then I'm going to start taking longs. Okay. So this is as simple as I can keep it. And once again, simplicity is key. Wait for the market to make sense. Of course, if we try to explore, again, we had all of this range, the market manipulated lower. Some of my community members took a long one right there. Massive manipulation into the highs right there, and then massively retracing to the downside. Right now we pulled back. So once again, in order for me to confirm a downtrend, I will need to see a break at least of this level right there. All right, so at least break below, pull back, and then from there we can initiate lower. Okay, so this is what I would need to see on GU. And again, just to keep it simple, currently nothing. So keep in mind all of those key levels, wait for momentum, and then let's start striking. Okay. GJ also, we saw this kind of last moment rejection. And what I told you is that I was overall bullish on GJ, and it actually played out in the bullish manner. We took out this previous high right there very nicely. We rejected very nicely as well. So the question is right now, are we turning bearish or are we still continuing with the bullish bias, right? If we explore the daily, I can see that we had a pullback right there with this boy. So I'm going to just drop it and see how it looks like on the 4H. If I drop on the 4H, yeah, very tricky also to analyze right there. But I believe our major structure last week was this one. It never got broken, so we were actually going long. But right now, as the market has taken the liquidity above these beautiful highs right there, which were pretty flat, and we had a very nice reaction, right? So what we can see right now is the market pushed, pulled back. This was supposed to be a higher low, tried to push higher and failed. And right now we're breaking structure. So this kind of introduces a little bit of sell bias for me. So let's see how it's going to go. But still, we are right now about to tap into this major demand, right? But once again, it can just be a tap, reaction, fail to follow through, and then we can start going lower. Okay, so like GU, GJ is also quite uncertain right now. We're just still stuck in this range right now at the top. It's an overall uptrend. I shouldn't say range. It's an overall uptrend, right? But we're back into this range on the left. We actually took out the high. So right now we can start expecting some sort of shorts. Okay. But let's see, as long as we remain above this zone right there, I will be looking for longs. And although we're having some sell sentiment right now, then definitely I do think also striking a short from right there is nice, right? you can just say I'm gonna give it a try, and just in case we flush, right? So you can actually nail a nice trade. I do think it's worth taking the risk, but still we are not ready to commit anywhere yet. Okay, so keep those two levels in mind. Feel free to strike from them all, and of course, as I keep saying, wait for the market to show you where it wants to go and then strike. Okay, GA, I'm not gonna spend much time on this one. According to me, this one is still bullish, right? It also depends on how AU is gonna play out. If we drop to the day, yeah, it pushed higher, pulled back. This one was a higher low. It pushed into the highs, failed to make a new higher high. Then it actually rolled again into the zone. So yeah, this one is very tricky. I just don't understand this pair. But pretty much I can see that shorter term, it's shifting into longs. So we had this kind of downtrend. The market tapped into the zone, manipulated the highs, manipulated the lows, and then it broke above the zone, which according to me, this one was the major lower high because it had a nice pullback, flushed into the lows, pulled back, then made a new lower low, and then we broke above it. So right now, what you can do is, of course, if AU is also going to play with you GA traders, then potentially I would love to see a tap inside this zone and then a continuation into the highs, which is going to mean on AU a continuation into the lows, which means a tap inside this lower high and a continuation into the lows. Okay, so watch out those two pairs. This is pretty much my outlook on GA, but also keep in mind of this wick. I do think this could just be a reaction point for the pullback before we continue higher, right? But just overall, keep in mind we are ranging right now, and until AU decides to take a move, then this one is just going to continue ranging like this. But overall, this is my outlook. And if we have a look at Euro GBP, there is nothing too much to update on this one. We had a massive run into the highs. Right now, we're just having a massive pullback, which means that once again, the Euro is weak. But again, is this just a pullback for the market to later continue higher? This is what we have to see right now. Okay, this week and potentially the upcoming weeks, but nothing too much to extract from this one. I'm not trading this one and I'm not planning to trade it, but pretty much this is our main range. So let's see how the market is going to start playing. Of course, if it continues to drop lower, this is going to be good for EU because then EU is going to gain weakness and it's going to flush. But yes, overall right now we're here. So potential setup could be something like that because this is our last kind of supply lower high. So possibly shorts can be taken from right there. But yeah, on the GBPs, guys, potentially the only GBP that I trade is GU. GU is completely uncertain right now. It's just stuck in the range. GJ has been amazing for the GJ traders. I hope you are catching the longs. My only tip right now will be to start being mindful of a potential reversal, right? So watch out this level, and as soon as we break below, let's just mark it out like this. As soon as we break below 155, then we can start calling the shorts. Okay, so those are the GBPs, keeping it very simple. Right now, let's look at gold and some indices. Very surprising week on gold. We're having a very beautiful bullish engulfing candle right there, breaking above some of the supply levels that we had marked, right? So this is very interesting. So I'm very curious to see how it's actually going to play out. As you can see, we opened on Monday, bullish, bullish, bullish. Then we stopped a little bit on Thursday. And then on Friday, we just rolled to the upside. Okay, so I'm very interested to see how this one is going to play out. And again, I am deleting right now these zones right there because currently the market is shifting towards bullishness, right? But then the biggest question is it just coming to retest this zone right there, which is kind of the major supply? So we come from here to here to here. Right now, this is the major one. So is it just coming to retest it once again to flush, right? Or is it just completely gonna reverse? So as long as we kind of remain below this one, I am still gonna retain that sell bias on gold, right? But if you start crossing above it and if you start creating a bullish trend, only then I'm gonna start looking for longs. Okay, so pretty much what we also had is we had this kind of supply zone right there. The market responded from it, and then it just very strongly broke to the upside. So this makes me think that the 4H is already turning bullish. You can see that we turned bullish. We came in right there, we responded, we did all of this fun stuff again during the news, and right now we're massively initiating higher. Okay, so currently my major 4-hourly higher low is this guy right there. So let's see how the market is going to respond from here. We can of course have a pullback and a continuation higher, which is going to mean that gold is turning bullish. But if this one actually fails right now, then we can start taking shorts. Okay, so again, give gold some time, right? Let's see how it's going to respond from this one. Let's see if it's going to reject from these zones right there and flush, or let's see if it's actually bullish. So if you come in right there inside the zone, monitor it, right? Drop to lower time frame, see if it's actually showing you the rejections. maybe take a long, right? But if we just crush this level, then this means that gold is going short, Dixie potentially going higher, and this was just a manipulation play right there. So again, let's see. And hey, keep in mind, gold is still in a range, right? Gold is still in a range. It's just manipulating into the highs, manipulating in the lows, but still we are stuck in this overall range, right? So we're not having trending markets right now. We're just in a very big range right there. So again, as I told you, intraday trading is fine, but wait for the market to show where it wants to go, and then trade with the big guys and with a higher probability. Some selling sentiment was introduced across the indices board this week. We had actually a very nice push into the highs, as you can see, but then we immediately withdrew to the downside. So the biggest question right now is this just a pullback right now to get a lower price before initiating higher for a new all-time high, or are we initiating sellers again and now we're going to continue breaking below? All right. I was examining also past data. This sometimes happens, like we have a very nice crash, then the market looks quite optimistic, but then it continues to sell off for a little bit more. Then of course this is great because we're going to get more buying opportunities. But personally on US30, I'm monitoring this zone, which is where we actually shifted the structure. So if you pull back towards this zone, which is 32.20, right? I am going to be monitoring to see how it's actually going to play out. We're coming into the middle of the month as well, pretty much around like from the 15th towards the 20th, we usually have a little bit of pullbacks, right, before actually continuing higher. So I do think this is just a pullback right now before continuing higher, but of course I could definitely be wrong. The stock market is looking good. Again, all of those worries with inflation and stuff, those are impacting on the market, but still in terms of technicals, we are overall in this bullishness. We had this little drop. We're tapping into demand zones on the left. So I'm really looking to see if we're going to have a confirmed higher high like this, right? Because right now, if you just look at it from a different perspective, this can just be a push to the downside, a pullback, double top, and then a drop. Okay, so let's see. Give it some time. Stay mindful, right? Right now, we're slightly bit bearish, but let's see how it's going to respond from this zone. Also, NASDAQ, some of the tech stocks are dropping. We had Meta as well, or Facebook, whatever they call themselves nowadays. Meta, yeah. Actually had a little crash right there. Again, it's part of the so those are tech companies, and we can see that they're pretty much dropping right now. But again, we were responding from this supply, which is what I told you that the market is going to respond from there. We pulled back below 50%. We tried to make a new high, but we failed, and right now we're pulling back even deeper into the origin of this big move. Okay, so like US30, NASDAQ is the same. We are yet to see if this one is going to hold or if we're going to attack the lower level. Right, and I do think this is quite feasible to drop towards like 1340 and then from there actually to head higher. All right, and this is going to be even a better buying opportunity because some of the tech stocks might drop even further. We can see a lot of them are dropping, like Netflix, Meta, and some others are dropping as well. And this will be a potential nice buying opportunity, right? So again, for NASDAQ traders, watch out for this zone. Watch out if it's actually going to hold. And of course, we can just have a hold, a reaction, lower high, and then just a drop. Make sure to keep marking your major lower highs, which is currently this one on the 4H, because this one pulled back, broke structure to the downside. So as long as we remain below this one on the 4H, we are short-term bearish, right? But let's see how we're going to respond from this level right there. S&P has a similar development to US30. We tapped inside this level. We had a little bit of bullishness right there. And we are still responding from this supply. Like we had a tap inside, reacted. We had another tap. Right now we're reacting, and in fact we're turning a little bit bearish right now on this one. So let's see. I'm just going to keep following the structure. This is my most recent lower high. I'm also looking forward to see the market tap right there. I'm also looking probably to get a new buy from here. I bought it from down there, but this could just be a scale in with slightly bit lower risk, right? With slightly bit lower investment, because once again, we can expect the market to continue dropping a little bit lower, right? I had a level, it's not on this chart, but I pretty much expect another drop towards the 4K, right? The 4K will be the next buying zone. So potentially, yeah, we can have a deeper correction on this index. So again, stay mindful of this zone right there, and let's see how it's going to respond. And of course, it will be much better to wait for a full hourly structure shift if you're day trading S&P to start looking for longs, right? Crypto reacted in a very nicely bullish manner, but again, as I told you, it's currently responding from a weekly zone, right? The daily and the 4 hourly have shifted a little bit. So we're also yet to see if this one is actually gonna start pumping into the highs, right? Or is it gonna sell off once again? Like Bitcoin pretty much broke this structure, which is pretty nice, right? But it's right now tapping into this guy right there. We have a very little kind of rally-based rallies demand right there that you can see we're currently reacting from. We can of course rocket from here and pump into the highs. Then if this one fails, I'm going to be looking for the market to tap inside this zone. And then of course, if this one fails, then definitely the low is also going to get taken out. Okay. So on Bitcoin, I am not feeling confident to be calling any longs yet because we're still in kind of this bearish weekly market. Okay, we're starting to see a little bit of buyer sentiment getting introduced, right? Even Twitter is starting to boom in again with a new bull market. But of course, let's see how it's going to go. Follow the structure. We're definitely having some bullish introduction, but it's not ready yet. Okay. Same with Ethereum as well. We can see that this one actually perfectly came into the supply. It's right now very nicely reacting. So the biggest key right now to look at, is this just a reaction for the market to push higher, or is this just going to flush lower? Okay, we can see that this, according to me, is the last daily higher low. It's not very easily seen on the weekly. You can see that we're just retesting weekly supply, but this is the last kind of major higher low, right? You can see the market tapped inside right there, accumulated, and then right now we're starting to drop. So I'm really curious if you're going to pull back towards like 27 and then potentially impulse into the highs, or if this one breaks, then I'm going to lose hope and potentially I can even call a break of this low and a top of 2K. Okay. So watch out for this level, which starts from 27 to 26. This is a key level to be monitoring, right? And if we actually fail to hold above this one, we're going to potentially continue dropping lower. So watch out. Crypto is also uncertain right now. And everything pretty much is uncertain at the beginning of this year with all of those economic stuff happening, inflation and the Fed and all of that stuff. So again, guys, my biggest tip will be to stay safe, protect your capital. This is your #1 priority. Right? Wait for your highest probability setups. Don't be afraid to spend the day without trading, right? I have numerous non-trading weeks. In fact, this one is a non-trading week for me. Like the trades that I took were pretty average and I secured them very fast as well. So those 2 break evens. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to some clear trending markets, to my setups getting back into the market and then just capitalizing on those. All right. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know down in the comments. Hit the like video as well to support the channel. Subscribe. I'm going to have much more stuff incoming for you as well. Some new videos, some other great stuff as well that I'm going to be sending you. So make sure you stay tuned. All right. And I wish you an amazing weekend if you're watching this during the weekend, and a crushing week if you are preparing just right now for the week ahead.